right, well, welcome everybody to M365 UK user group. This is our October edition. And so thank you for those who have joined so far. We're still getting people coming in, and we've got about 55 attendees today who's registered for the event for 2 sessions. So looking forward to your company. And this event is being recorded as always it does. So it will be made available sometime this weekend. So please feel free to post questions in the chat window, and all I would ask is from each and every one of you to just be sensible and just avoid any kind of offense or anything like that as well. So we're all here to have a great time and learning experience from our speakers today. So in terms of where we are, so if we look at the, excuse me, sorry, my slides, just when you want them to work. Right, oh, there we are. So in terms of, we have got 2 hours or so today. We'll kind of just quickly introduce our speakers. But in terms of fairly regular agenda that we have, so 50 minutes each session, and we have then 10 minutes break just for all of us to kind of stretch our legs and things, get a coffee and all those things. So we'll take a break, and then obviously we'll continue with session on the Microsoft 365 retention deep dive. So probably introduce our speakers in a short few minutes. But for those of you who are new to the M365 UK, I'm Chirag Patel. I live and work in London. techchirag.com is the best way to get to me and connect on social media and various pieces. But by day, I am a Microsoft 365 consultant, doing all kinds of workloads around deployments, migrations, and I'm also a community speaker. So I speak at various events and doing workshops. But also, such as this, I'm the organizer of M365 UK, and really kind of just work with the Office 365 and SharePoint throughout my time that I've been working for over 20 years now. So that's a bit about me on that one. And then if we look at the M365 UK, we've been going on for about well over 14, 15 months now, since summer of 2020 last year. Seems like a long time ago, but thoroughly enjoyed, and a good sort of attendees we get as well. And we've got, as a group, we've got over 670 members of M365 UK. So big thanks to every one of you who's, at least I hope, you got something out of these sessions, but also our speakers over the last all the months that kind of has helped us out as well. So those are the details there. So the next event we have is on the 17th of November, and there's the link over there, and I'll post this link in the chat window shortly. So feel free to submit any experiences of your M365 or any other workloads for SharePoint or Teams. Would be great to have you on that. And meetup.com/M365 UK is the meetup site. So look out for that for the events when I publish them. So then you can kind of follow the updates. But also I tend to make the slides available. So after these sessions, we'll get the slides onto our SharePoint for M365 UK, and also the M365 UK videos YouTube channel, so that you can get access all the previous recordings. So hopefully that's kind of okay for you. But for those of you who are new to the UK user group, then a warm welcome to you, and hope to see you next month as well. Okay, so that's a bit enough about M365 UK. So it gives me a great pleasure to welcome Nanddeep and Smita Nachan, who are both MVPs. In fact, Nanddeep, I think both of him and myself, we were awarded 2 years ago, and we're both in the same category of Office apps and services, and pretty much Nanddeep kind of gets involved with all things Office 365, SharePoint, a regular contributor to the community, both speaking as well as coding and things. Smita, of course, is Office Development MVP, and also huge experiences around working with various implementations in the Office development and other areas. So a big welcome to you both, and looking forward to the session today as well, because although it's a session about information barriers in Office 365, but there is a huge amount of things that goes on there. It's not one of those straightforward implementations, because there's a lot more thinking, that planning that goes around it. So really kind of looking forward to that and just really understand some of the practicalities. And with that, I'll just say, Nanddeep and Smita, please take it away. And once again, welcome to M365 UK.
Thank you very much. Chirag, can you please promote us to presenter so that we can share the screen? Okay,
Yeah,
and for others,
sure,
at least
that would help, wouldn't it?
at least sorry that there is some issue with my laptop, so I have to or we have to share the laptop with Smita. So at least you can see just Smita's name here, but at least we had to.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
So do you want me to do it to Smita, right?
Yeah, sure, to Smita. But yeah, miss, at least we will make sure that we have workable demo at least.
No, that's good. There we go.
Okay, thank you. Should I take the presentation?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, sure. All right, thank you. Okay. Oops. Okay, please let me know if you can see the screen. Hear me okay?
Perfect.
All right. Okay, thanks. Okay, so hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Chirag, for inviting us today. So the topic of discussion of today is the explore information barriers in Office 365. So we have been using Office 365, including various apps and services inside of it, maybe Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, for our collaboration purposes. So again, means in this kind of a pandemic situation, those three has given us good opportunity to collaborate with our colleagues so that we can share information with our colleagues, we can engage them into the content and all those things. So all in all, Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive for Business, they are very much good for collaboration. We should look for the collaboration kind of an opportunities. But at the same time, due to maybe any kind of an legal restrictions or maybe any kind of an regulatory or compliance kind of an requirement, we still want to restrict that kind of an communication so that we can isolate at least two entities or maybe a couple of entities or more entities to not to have collaboration with each other. So what we will do is in this session is we will see all those kind of scenarios wherein these kind of things will be needed, even though Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive are good for the collaboration. But again, there are certain scenarios wherein we want to restrict that kind of collaboration between few entities. And then again, in this session, we will see how we can identify those kind of entities, how we can restrict them, and again, how we will be able to create those information policies, information barriers, and all those things. Just from the demo perspective, this configuration itself takes maybe more than 2 days, because for certain settings it needs at least to be waited for a day. So for that reason, we have all of our configuration ready, but we will walk you through that. Okay. All right. So I hope that sets the context and gets you excited about this topic. So quickly, the agenda for this session is we will see what is meant by information barriers in a nutshell, and then how we can use that in terms of Microsoft 365. And then again, we have certain configurations that needs to be done by your admin for the information barriers to get set up. Then again, we will see when we will have a lot many users, how we can segment those users based on their certain attributes or characteristics. And then once we do that, we will define our information barrier policies, or sometimes even you can see this being referred as IB. Okay, so wherever if you see IB or information barriers, it is the same thing. Then we will more deep dive into how we can create those information barriers in Microsoft Teams, as well as how we can do it in SharePoint as well as in OneDrive. So before we start the session, quick introduction of myself. I'm Nanddeep Nachan. I'm from Pune, India, and I'm Microsoft MVP for Office Apps and Services, as well as Microsoft Certified Trainer, author of couple of books on SharePoint Framework as well as SharePoint Hybrid. And onto the right-hand side, here are a few of the social handles to get in touch with me. And with me today is Smita.
Hello all, myself Smita Nachan. I am from Pune, India. I am a speaker, I am author, I am a Microsoft MVP and Microsoft MCT, and these are some of my handlers by which you can get in touch with me. So now let's go ahead and check what is these information barriers in Microsoft 365. So Microsoft 365 enables communication and collaboration across groups and organizations and supports ways to restrict communication and collaboration among specific groups of users when necessary. So this may include situations or scenario where you want to restrict a communication and collaboration between a two groups to avoid a conflict of interest from occurring in your organization. So this may also include a situation when you need to restrict the communication collaboration between a certain people inside your organization to safeguard some of the internal information. So information barriers are supported in Microsoft Teams, SharePoint Online, and OneDrive for Business. A compliance administrator or information barriers administrator can define a policies to allow or prevent the communication between the groups of users in Microsoft Teams.
Okay, so Miss, just before we start, like this is one kind of an example wherein this is the banking kind of an example wherein we have couple of segments into the banking. First one is this investment banker, and then we have financial advisor. So with the bank terminologies or with the bank norms, these two department or these two segments should not talk to each other, so that we can maintain that integrity, and again they won't be able to collaborate and share the ideas, because it is not good for the bank. But at the same time, we also have HR, which is common all across the organization. So at least HR, they should be able to talk to investment as well as to the financial advisors. But at least these two entities, they should not be able to talk to each other. So that means both the entities will exist into the bank, but they won't be able to search each other. They won't be able to collaborate each other. So this is the topic of today's discussion, like how we will be able to achieve these kind of scenarios with information barriers.
So now we will give you some of the ideas for the scenarios for this information barriers. So information barrier policies can be applied to the situation like user in the day trade group should not communicate or share files with the market team. Then the finance personnel working on confidential company information should not communicate or share files with certain group within their organization. Also, an internal team with trade secret material should not call or chat online with the people in certain groups within their organization. A research team should only call or chat online with a product development team, and in the banking sector, restrict communication between the investment bankers and financial advisors. So in general, communications between the sales and research departments in an organization. So when it comes to the education sector, so in a student in one school are not able to look up contact details for the student of any another school. And for the legal sections, so maintaining the confidentiality of the data that is obtained by the lawyer of one client and preventing it from being accessed by a lawyer for the same firm who represents a different client. When it's come to the government sector, the information access and control are limited across the departments and groups. And the last one is for the professional services. So a group of people in a company is only able to chat with a client or a specific customer via guest access during a customer engagement. So for all of these example scenarios, and there are many more also available, so information barrier policies can be defined to prevent or allow communications and collaboration in Microsoft Teams, SharePoint Online, and OneDrive. So such a policies can prevent people from calling or chatting with those they should not, or enable people to communicate only with the specific groups in Microsoft Teams. So with the information barriers policies in effect, whenever user who are covered by those policies attempt to communicate or collaborate with others in Microsoft Teams, SharePoint Online, or OneDrive, checks are done to prevent or allow communication and collaboration, so as defined by the information barrier policy. So now let's see what happens with these information barriers in Microsoft Teams. So when an information barrier policies are in place, people who should not communicate or share files with other specific users won't be able to find, select, chat, or call those users. So with information barriers, checks are in place to prevent the unauthorized communication and collaboration. An information barrier applies to Microsoft Teams, that is the chats and channels, the SharePoint Online and OneDrive. So in Microsoft Teams, information barrier policies determine and prevent this following kind of unauthorized communication, like searching for a particular user, adding a particular member to a team, starting a chat session with someone, starting a group chat, inviting someone to join a meeting, sharing a screen, placing a call, sharing a file with another user, and accessing access to the file through the shared link. So if the people involved are included in an information barrier policy to prevent the activity, they will not able to proceed. So in addition, potentially everyone included in an information barrier policy can be blocked from communicating with the others in a Microsoft Teams. So when a people affected by information barrier policies are a part of the same team or group chat, they might be removed from those chat sessions and further communication with the group might not be allowed. So now let's see what happens with information barriers in SharePoint Online and OneDrives. So information barrier policies determine and prevent the following kinds of unauthorized collaboration, like adding a member to a site, accessing a site or a content by a user, sharing a site or a content with another user, and searching a site.
Okay, so now let's take one kind of an use case where we have a company, and in that we have at least three departments: sales, research, and HR. So by default, HR should be able to talk to everyone in the organization, including sales and research. But at the same time, sales and research departments, they should not be able to communicate with each other. So in this demo, we will see like how we can segment our users, and then how we will restrict communication between these two segments. So that means no one from sales will be able to reach out to research, no one from research will be able to reach out to sales, but at the same time, HR can reach out to sales and research as needed. Okay, so with that, let's see like how this information barrier configurations are, because whenever we want to enable these information barriers in the organization, there are some kind of an configurations which needs to happen at the admin level. So let's have a look at those. So on a higher note, means at least all of those configurations or all of those information barriers can be divided into four parts. So first one is configuring the prerequisites and permissions. So there are certain prerequisites from the licensing perspective, as well as there are certain permissions will be needed to set up these information barriers in the organization. Secondly, we should have all of the information correctly represented in our Azure AD, so that that information can be used to segment the users inside of our organization. Thirdly, that once we have segmented our users, we can create and configure those information barrier policies through which we can define who can talk to each other and who should not. And then once we do that, everything is still will be in the inactive mode, but then we will activate those by applying those information barrier policies. So we will have our users which will be segmented, and then we will have the information barrier policies applied onto the segments, because of which they will be able to communicate or will not be able to communicate. So this is onto the higher level. So now that let's see what are the required licenses for this one. So at least we will need Office 365 or Microsoft 365 E4 or A5 kind of a license. And then we will need or we will need Office 365 Advanced Compliance or Microsoft 365 Compliance, including E5 or A5, or we will need Microsoft 365 Insider Risk Management. And again, just note that this will not work in the E5 developer kind of an environment. This is only supported with Office 365 E5, not with E5 developer. Second thing is for the permissions, those will be needed. So in order to define, as well as once we define, we need to even go back and edit those information barrier policies if in case we want to make any changes. So to do that, we must have any of these roles which is listed on the screen. So we should at least be Microsoft 365 Global Administrator, because Global Administrator can do anything, or we could be Compliance Administrator, or at least we should have a role of information barrier compliance management. So at least if we have any one of this role assigned to the user or to the admin, in that case that admin will be able to define as well as add edit all of the information barrier policies. Then again, we have something related to directory data.
So this third one is a directory data. The organization structure must be reflected in Azure Active Directory by populating the correct user account attributes such as group membership, department name, and many more things. So the common attributes including this company, department, extension attributes, member of, usage location, and postal code can be used with information barriers. Then let's see what are these attributes for information barrier policies. So certain attributes in Azure Active Directory can be used to segment users. So once the segments are defined, those segments can be used as a filters for information barrier policies. So for example, you might use this department to define a segments of users by department within your organization. So assuming no simple employee works for two departments at the same time. So the next one is this use profile information in Azure Active Directory. So the first one is this profile picture. So select the thumbnail image for the user's account. So this picture appears in Azure Active Directory and on the user's personal pages such as myapps.microsoft.com page. Then the identity. So you can add or update an additional identity value for the user. So for example, you can include initials or a company name. Then for the job information, add any job related information such as this user job title, department, or manager. And then we have a settings. So you can decide whether the user can sign in to Azure Active Directory tenant. You can also specify the user's global location. In the contact information, add any relevant contact information for the user. Expect for some user's phone number or the mobile number contact information. Then we have authentication contact information. So verify this information to make sure there is an active phone number and email address for the user. So this information is used by Azure Active Directory to make sure the user is really user during this sign-in process. So authentication contact information can be updated only by this global administrator. So let's see scope directory search. So before defining this information barrier policy, we should enable the scope directory search in Microsoft Teams. So it allows organizations to create a virtual boundaries that can be controlled how users can find and communicate with other users in their organization. So you have to follow this some of the steps to turn on this scope directory search. So for that purpose, first we have to open the Microsoft Teams Admin Center. Let's go there. So once you open this Microsoft Teams Admin Center, let it open. So there is a left menu. So from the left menu, you have to click on organization wide settings. Is anyone is facing issue? Because I can see that someone is saying that they are not able to see. Okay, at least I am able to see. Okay, yeah. So from this left menu, we have to select this organization-wide settings, and once it is there, we have to go to the team settings. Let me do it once again. Let me do it once again.
Oh, yeah, Miss, at least one thing here is that we just need to toggle on those scope directory search using exchange address book policy. Looks like those settings have been moved somewhere, but yeah, Miss, at least this is the place wherein we will be able to enable the scope directory search in Microsoft Teams, because this one will be used for scoping out, and then again will be used within search for Microsoft Teams. The next prerequisite that we have is the Exchange Online license. So each of the target user who we want to target for information barrier policies should have at least Exchange Online license assigned to him. And then again, we should have the audit logs turned on. So in order to look up the status of policy application, audit logging must be turned on. And then again, from Office 365 Compliance Center, just make sure that you have it turned on. So you can navigate to this URL, compliance.microsoft.com/audit log search. And then if you see a screen something like this, then you're okay. Otherwise, there will be a button through which you will be able to turn on the audit logging. As well as there is a PowerShell support to make sure that it is turned on. If no, then even we can turn it on from PowerShell. Seventh prerequisite is that we should have no address book policies. So these address book policies, or commonly they are known as ABPs. They allow you to segment the users into specific group to give them customized global address list, or we can call it as a GAL in Outlook or Outlook on the web. Formerly, it was known as the Outlook web app. And before you define and apply the information barrier policies, we just need to make sure that we don't have any exchange address book policies in place, because the information barriers are based on the address book policies. But again, the two kind of policies are not compatible with each other. And if you have such policies, make sure that you remove your address book policies first before you go ahead and configure the information barrier policies. The eighth prerequisite that we have here is this PowerShell modules. So information barrier policies are defined and managed in the Office 365 Security and Compliance Center using PowerShell commandlets. And then you will also need some kind of an Azure PowerShell modules. So these are the PowerShell modules that will be needed to be installed. So first one is this AZ module, and then again we'll have to get it installed, the Exchange Online Management module. Once we do that, we can run these two commands: connect-az account, specifying our tenant address. Again, we will have to specify the user who is the global admin, or at least that compliance admin. And then again, once we are connected to our Azure AD account, we can run this command, connect-ipps session, through which we'll be able to connect to the security and compliance related settings, from where we will be able to apply the information barrier policies. So the ninth step that we have here is that we need to give the admin consent for information barriers in Microsoft Teams. So again, here we have set of defined instructions from Microsoft, because this one is being treated as an app. So you can connect to your Azure AD account, and then this is the application ID, which is specific to this particular information barriers in Microsoft Teams. We will have to specify that, and then we just have to run this command, get-Azure AD service principal, by filtering out onto that particular application ID. And once we get that, we can just start this process, which will open up your browser, and then it will ask you to give some kind of an consent. So just read out those consents. Those are nothing but read and write access for the directory data, read and write for all groups, and then sign in and read the user profile. So at least these are the three major consents that will be needed And once you accept those consent, at least we are through with all of the prerequisites for setting up the information barriers for Microsoft Teams as well as for others. So now that let's see how we can segment our users.
So during this phase, we should determine what information barrier policies are needed. So you have to make a list of segments to define and then define your segments. So let's see, determine what the policies are needed. So considering legal and industry regulations, who are the groups within your organization who will need information barrier policies, and as per that you have to make a list. So are there any groups who should be prevented from communicating with another group? Are there any groups that should be allowed to communicate only one or two other groups? So you have to think about the policies you need as belonging to one of these two groups. So first one is the block. So the block policies prevent one group from communicating with another group. Second one is the allow. So the allow policy will allow a group to communicate with only certain other specific groups. So when we have the initial list of groups and policies, then we can just proceed to identify these segments. So now let's see, the next one is how to identify the segments. So in addition to the initial list of policies, make a list of segments for your organization. So user who will be included in information barrier policies should belong to a segment. So you have to plan your segment carefully, as a user can be only in a one segment. So each segment can have only one information barrier policy applied. So you have to determine which attributes in your organization directory that you will use to define the segments. So you can use a department, member of, or any other supported attributes. So you have to make sure you have the values in the attributes you select for the users.
So now that let's take the same use case that we have, and then what we will do is we will create three segments based on the department attribute. So again, for that, the need is that we should have our data correctly populated inside of our Azure AD. So for example, if I again go back to Azure AD, here we have all of the users. So make sure that we have data correctly populated. That means, let's say, for example, I will just open up this user, and then in this or for this user, we should have all of the correct data populated in case on which kind of an attribute we want to create a segment upon. So let's say, for example, if you want to segment our users based on the department, we should make sure that all of the users here have the correct department value reflected. At the same time, for example, if we are considering any of the other field, maybe just make sure that that particular field is correctly noted into the Azure AD. So here we have defined certain departments for certain users. So what we are going to do now is we are going to have at least demo with 3 users. So we will take this Cameron as our sales person. Then we will take someone from HR, maybe Diego, and then again we will take someone from research. So these are our 3 users which we will be using throughout our demo, and then we will see like how we will be able to segment these users based on this department, and then how we will restrict communication between Cameron and Irvin, who are from sales and research. But at the same time, Diego, he's from HR, so he should be able to communicate with both Cameron and Irvin, who are from sales and research department. So now that we are just using department attribute, using that department attribute, we are going to define 3 segments. So first one is HR segment, then sales, and then research segment. So again, as I said, we don't have UI available for this to create the segment. Maybe fortunately or unfortunately, fortunately because of this we do get a chance to automate these things, because right now that we are creating this segment, but again we might have to revisit the segment, maybe change the segment. In that case, PowerShell support is good. But again, for example, if you are not maybe comfortable with PowerShell, probably it is a pain area. But at least, yeah, as of now or as of today, we just have information barrier policies can be defined through PowerShell only. So first thing that we need to do is we need to create our segments. So for that we have commandlet available, which is new hyphen organization segment. So what this commandlet will do is it will help us to define one segment, and then we are naming this segment as HR segment, and to that segment we can apply certain filter, and it can be assigned using user group filter. And in that case, we can make use of any of the attribute which is available from Azure AD. So in this case, we are taking department, but again, we can make use of all of the attributes that we have seen in the prerequisites. So even you can make use of any of your custom attributes here as well. But for this demo, we are mainly concentrating onto the department. So that means now that when we will run this command, this one will be the output, and then again all of the users who are from the HR department, they will be segmented under HR segment, and then this one will be the output, and then again just make sure that is valid is set to true, and then the object state is new. If you see these values reflected here, in that case all is good, and then we have this segment created successfully. Similarly, we will now create the another segment called as sales segment, same commandlet, but just that we will specify the name of sales, and then again we will use the department filter of sales, so that now we have all of the users who are part of our sales department will be segmented under sales segment, and then again make sure that the is valid returns true, so that we can make sure, or we will be very much sure that this segment has been created successfully. Now we will do the same thing for the research department as well. So here the filter that we will use is department equals research, and it will segment all of the users under the research department as the research segment. So at the end of this exercise, we will have three segments created: HR, sales, and research, and all of the users who are from those respective departments will fall under those segments. So now that at least we have clear segments of the users like HR, sales, research, so that we will be able to define our information barrier policies by targeting those segments. Okay, so let's see like how we can define those information barrier policies.
So determine whether you need to prevent the communication between the certain segments or limit the communication to certain segments. So ideally, you will use the minimum number of policies to ensure your organization is compliant with legal and industry requirements. So let's say how do you block communication between the segments. So when you want to block the segments from communicating with each other, you define two policies, one for each direction. Each policy blocks communication one way only. So for example, suppose you want to block a communication between segment A and segment B. In this case, you define one policy preventing a segment A from communicating with segment B, and then define a second policy to prevent a segment B from communicating with segment A. Let's see how to allow a segment to communicate only with one other segment. So we can allow a one segment to communicate with only one other segment.
Okay, so now that again we will take the same use case. So we have at least three segments defined. Now that what we will do is again we will create three policies to restrict or allow the communication between these three segments. Okay, so far we have just reached until this point that we have three segments ready. So now that we want to restrict communication from sales to research one way, and then from research to sales the other way. And then again, we want to have the communication done between HR and research segment. Okay. All right. So let's go one by one. Policy number one, that we need to restrict the communication by defining the policy so that it can restrict any kind of a communication between sales and research. So again, here we do have a commandlet available, which is new hyphen information barrier policy. We can name that policy based on whatever we want to do, but I will just simply say it as sales to research. And then again, we need to define the assigned segment. That means for which segment we are defining this policy. So here we say that we are defining this policy for sales segment, and then again we are blocking the research segment. So we can specify that with saying segments blocked, and we can specify the name of the other segment, which is research. So once we run this policy, yeah, before that, we need to set the state to inactive, because we don't want to directly go ahead and apply the information barrier policy upfront. So for that reason, we will make that state to inactive, because we want to carry out certain test cases before we can go ahead and do that. So we will still set it to inactive state. Once we do that, at least this one will be the outcome. Again, make sure that is valid returns true here, so that we will be very much sure that this policy has been created. So again, just one thing to note here is that this is still one-way communication. So once, if we just define this policy, in that case, sales won't be able to communicate to research, but still someone from research can initiate any kind of a communication with sales. And again, you can see this warning at the end that right now this one is in the inactive state. We'll have to go ahead and make this active in order to get this policy in picture. The second policy that we have here is the other way of communication from research to sales. So again, we can use the same commandlet new-information barrier policy by specifying any of the name which we like. And then we are defining this particular policy onto the research segment by blocking the sales segment. And again, with the state of inactive, so that whenever this policy will be created, now that we are imposing the other restriction from research to sales, so that no one from research will be able to communicate with sales. And again, this one is still in the inactive state, and we can see the warning for that. Now that again, we'll have to define the other policies for HR. So we'll go ahead with the same new-information barrier policy. We will assign this policy to the HR segment, and then again we will say that allowed segments by specifying into the comma separated values like HR segment, sales segment, and research segment. And then again, we will still set this state to inactive. So what will happen is that through this, at least HR will be able to communicate with sales and research. And again, just to make note that this one is still in the inactive mode. And then again, let's say, for example, we have defined many policies. Now that we want to see like the information about all of those policies that we have defined. In that case, we can simply run this command get-information barrier policy by selecting the name and GUID, because this GUID will be used in the further PowerShell commandlets to define more information on that. So at least if you are not sure like how many information barrier policies are there in the system, we can make use of this command. Then now that let's see like how we can activate those information barrier policies, because when we have created that information barrier policies, those were in the inactive state. So to do that, we can just run this command set-information barrier policy by specifying the identity, and that identity will come from here. Okay, so for example, if you want to enable this sales research, so we have this one starting with GUID of 4C ending with 9A, which is being reflected here. So we can make that particular information barrier policy active. And again, this is not again into the immediate effect. It needs at least 30 to 45 minutes for system to start applying the policies. So it's not like we have applied the policies and then again all of the communication or the collaboration between two departments will be or two segments will be blocked, but it will eventually take some time. And then again, all of those policies will be in picture for Teams, Sharepoint, as well as for OneDrive. So this is how we'll be able to activate our information barrier policies. And then lastly, like once we are done with activating all of those policies, what we can done is we still have to run one command called as start-information barrier policies application. So it will apply all of your active information barrier policies in the Microsoft 365 Compliance Center. So when you have finished setting your information barrier policies to active status, then we will have to use this commandlet in the security and compliance center. Again, after you run this command, again allow at least 30 minutes for the system to start applying those policies, and the system applies policies user by user. The system processes about 5,000 user accounts per hour. So for example, if you have more number of users in those segments, it might take some more time. Okay, so based on the number of segments you have defined, based on the number of users in the segment, it will take the time accordingly to get into the picture. So now that once we run this command, like start-information barrier policies application, if in case we want to see what is the status of that, in that case we can just run get-information barrier policies application status, and it can return us the status. So when you will start it first, the status will be not started, and we will have to wait until it goes to completed state. Once it is completed, we have all of our information barrier policies in place, and then all of our segments or those users, they won't be able to communicate with each other. Okay, so with that, let's see a quick demo of this. We have been talking a lot, but now that time for a demo, like let's see how this one looks like. So as I said, we have these 3 users actives with which we are going to see the demo. So we have Erwin, Diego, and then we have Cameron. So I have logged in with each of those. So what I will do is I will keep switching between those two or those users. So this is the user who is Diego. He is from HR. So let's say right now this HR user has been logged into Microsoft Teams. He can just open up the team and then go to the add member, and here he will be able to find maybe Cameron, and then again he will be able to add Cameron again. For let's say for example he want to add the other user. I forgot the name, Erwin. Okay, let's say he want to add Erwin. He also will be able to add that, but again make a note that for example even the HR cannot add both to the same team. Let's say if HR adds someone from sales, he won't be able to still go ahead and be able to add someone from research. We will see that. I'm just parking that particular scenario for SharePoint and OneDrive, but let's say now that from the sales perspective. So now that this is the user who is Cameron, and he's from sales department. He goes to his team and then try to click add a member. So from here, let's say he want to add Diego, he can go ahead and then he's able to see this HR manager Diego. He can add Diego, but let's say now that he want to add the other user, which is Erwin. So in that case, let's just try to search for Erwin. So now that you can see that even though Erwin exists in the system, the search returns him nothing, saying that we didn't find any matches. So this doesn't mean that Erwin is not in the system, but Erwin is a part of the information barrier policy that we have set, and then through which someone from this sales team who is Cameron won't be able to communicate with Erwin. So he won't be even able to add him to any of the team. He won't be able to start a chat. He won't be able to start any of the meetings. And let's say, for example, both these two members are part of any of the team chat previously, they will be removed from that chat. Let me see, for example, if I have that scenario somewhere here. So what I did previously, that I added everyone to the same chat, and now that you can see, once we had applied that information barrier policy here, even the someone from the sales team was in this same discussion, and from here you can see that the message saying that Edwin has been removed from this chat, because right now we have those information barrier policies set up, because of which even though Edwin was part of any of the chat before the information barrier policies was in place with any of the person from sales, he will be removed from those existing chats, existing teams as well, right? So this is how it works. And again, same thing goes from research to sales, so sales to research. So at least HR will be able to communicate with both the departments, but at least we are restricting the communication between sales and research both the ways. Okay, so with that, now we will see how we can use this information barrier policies in SharePoint and OneDrive.
So with SharePoint information barriers, a SharePoint or a global admin can associate a segment to a site to prevent the site from being shared with or accessed by user outside the segment. So up to 100 compatible segments can be associated with the sites, and the segments are associated at the site level. And the Microsoft 365 groups connected to the site is also associated with the site segment. The next thing is we can see how to enable this information barrier policies in SharePoint and OneDrive. So SharePoint administrator or global administrator can enable information barriers in a SharePoint Online. So you have to download and install the latest version of SharePoint Online Management Shell, and you have to run this below command to enable this information barriers in SharePoint and OneDrive. And you have to wait for approximately 1 hour for the changes to take the effect.
Okay, so now let's see like how we can manage those segments. So once we are logged into the SharePoint admin center, we'll be able to see all those segments. So let me again go back here. This is the SharePoint admin center, and if I go to the active segments, here we should have something for the active segments. Let me check here. Okay, so here we have those segments. So at least from this, we will be able to add a segment to each of the SharePoint site. So what we can do now from here is that probably even we can try to add someone from the research to sales or sales to research, and even that can be seen. So let's say we will take example of this, which is for sales. Let me just try to open that. This one is admin account, but let me just go to the account from sales. Okay, this is okay, Cameron, and he's from sales, I guess. Yeah. So let me open up this site with Cameron. Hopefully Cameron should have access to this site. Oh, access denied. Let me just do one thing quickly. Let me add Cameron to this site. Okay. Okay, so now that I have added Cameron to this site as an owner, so what will happen now is that only since this particular site is available only for the sales, even Cameron won't be able to add someone from the research, or at the same time, even probably if we just go back to this manage, and if we try to search for Edwin, at least we will be able to see that. But once we go here and save, it will throw the error that we won't be able to add him. Okay, so this is how it will work. And then again, we will be able to apply all those policies for information barrier policies for SharePoint. And again, through this SharePoint sites, both two departments won't be able to collaborate with each other. Okay, so moving ahead, this is how we'll be able to apply the segments. But again, yeah, at the same time, for example, if you are here and if you want to apply the segments to any of the existing site, what can be done is you can just open up any of the site, click on edit, and then again here we have those policies. And then from here we will be able to change the policy. Right now I have already applied the policy, so I won't be able to make a change. But maybe let's take example of any of the other SharePoint site where we don't have any of the policies defined. In that case, we can go to the edit, go to the policies, and here we can see that we don't have any segments applied. We can click on edit, and then we can search for any of the segments. So let's say, for example, we start with HR segment. Then since HR is allowed to have any kind of an communication with sales as well as research, we see both the options. Okay, so let's go ahead and also add sales segment to this SharePoint site. Now that if you just click on plus, you won't be able to see the other drop down, because sales and research, they cannot be in the same SharePoint site because they are segmented differently. Let's say we will close this again and we will start with sales first. Okay, so or research first. So we are starting with research. Then again, so that means for this particular SharePoint site, we have segment added as research. We will go ahead and click add segment. And then again, if you see the drop down, we just have HR segment option. We don't see the sales segment option. The reason is that because the way of restriction between those two things, like sales and research, they cannot be a part of same SharePoint site because they are segmented differently. So same thing will again happen. For example, if we go ahead with selecting the sales segment first, we won't be able to add sales and research at the same time. So this is how these information barrier policies will help us to restrict any kind of communication between those two. Even though those two exist in the system, we won't be able to find them, we won't be able to add them. Again, here we have some kind of an PowerShell to manage those segments onto a SharePoint site. If in case you want to have some kind of an automation, these are the PowerShells through which you can again connect to Azure AD account, connect to the security and compliance center using connect-ipps session, and then again you can get all those organization segments, and then you can connect to SharePoint online service, and then just use set-spo site by specifying that add information segment, specifying that segment GUID. So if in case you want to get it automated, don't want to use UI, even through PowerShell it can be controlled. Then again we have few things from auditing perspective.
So after you enable information barriers for SharePoint, audit events are available in Office 65 Audit Log to help you to monitor the information barrier SharePoint activities, and the audit logs are whenever audit logs are logged event whenever the following activities are occur, like the segments are added to a site, segments are changed to a site, and segments are removed from a site. So let's see the site creation and the management. So when a segmented users create a SharePoint site, the site is associated with the user segment. So in addition, the site owner will have the capability to add more segments to a SharePoint site that already has the segments, and the site owners cannot remove added segments from the site, and the SharePoint admins will have to remove added segments in your organization if needed. Then let's see the segments associated with Microsoft Teams sites. So when a team is created in Microsoft Teams, a SharePoint site is automatically created for the Teams file. So within a 24 hours, the segments associated with the Teams members are automatically associated with the sites, and the SharePoint admins can't change the segments associated with the site when the site is connected to a Teams. Let's say this site sharing. So when a segment is associated with the site, the option A to share the anyone with the link is disabled, and the site and its content can be shared only with the users whose segment matches that of the site. So for example, if a site is associated with only HR, the site can be shared with other HR's users only. So even though the HR is compatible with the both sales and research, the new users can be added to the site as the site members only if their segment matches that of this site. So when a site has no segments associated, the sites and its contents can be shared based on the information barrier policies applied to the user. So for example, if a user in HR is allowed to communicate with the users in research, the user will able to share the site with those users.
All right, so then we are coming to the end of the session. Here are few of the references if in case you want to explore more onto the information barrier policies, as well as you want to implement this information barriers in your organization. So these are few of the good Microsoft documentation references. So the first link will get you introduced to the information barrier policies, and then the subsequent one will get you introduced to how you can apply those information barrier policies for Microsoft Teams, for SharePoint, as well as for OneDrive. So with that, thank you very much for having us. If there are any questions, we're happy to take those.
Great stuff. Thanks, Nanddeep, Smita. Really good session. I tell you what, I learned quite a lot. I think it flowed very logically, and all the methods and the considerations, in the right order. So clearly, there's a lot to take on, right? As opposed to just turning things on.
Yeah, definitely this is a very vast topic, and we won't be able to do a live demo because we have to wait at certain stages.
Yeah.
So that's the reason we just documented or just took the screenshot of all those when we were executing the commands, and then we were just able to show you the end result. But again, this is a but yeah, again, this is a nice one because we do collaborate with people very frequently, but just in case if there are any kind of an policies or legal or any kind of an regulatory restrictions through which we want to restrict, this is good thing, because I have seen at least or before this information barrier policies, even we we used to create some kind of a custom solutions, maybe in SharePoint. For Microsoft Teams, I'm not much aware of, but at least for SharePoint Teams, we used to create those web parts and then again restrict the users being able to access that particular content, but that was just limited to the web part. If someone knows the site contents URL, he or she can still go to that and then see the content.
That's right. That's right. I think what I'll do, just while we are talking away, I think we'll just get the attendees to ask. Please feel free to ask questions. You can unmute, ask, or if you want to post a question in the chat window, your choice. So yeah, let's do that. I guess whilst while we wait for the questions to come through, I have a question more from a perspective of like, if a company is going through a divestment, for example, splitting a company, and who wants to carve out various services like SharePoint, emails, OneDrive, the whole lot, which predominantly happens through migration scenarios, but at the same time, there's going to be that window where they will still want to have access to the source tenant. And would you use information barriers solution in that perspective?
Correct. Yeah, Miss, at least this one is kind of a tricky question, because whenever we are into the migration journey, so for example, if onto our source we don't have any kind of an restrictions between those two entities communication, in that case, if we directly apply the information barrier policies onto the target environment, in that case, there might be various usability or those content related issues, because most of the people from sales will say that, okay, I was able to access this document before when it was in the source environment, but now we don't, because now that we have those information barrier policies in place. So only thing here is I will say that maybe we can educate everyone that we are going to have those information barrier policies in place, so that these two departments won't be able to communicate. But still there will be those issues, because mostly someone will say that, okay, I was able to do it in the source tenant, now that I'm not.
Sure. Yeah, no, it can be tricky, I guess. So no, that's good. It's good. Okay. I guess there's no questions yet. So to me that looks really good, because it means your presentation went very well.
Not sure on that. You see, whenever there is a silence, in that case, there are both the possibilities. I hope it is the positive one. In case still, if you have any questions, I already have shared the LinkedIn and Twitter handlers. So please feel free to get in touch with us. Yeah. Great. I see Raphael is already excited for his session.
I have also a question to information barriers, but all fine. I will send you an email.
Oh, sure, definitely.
Good. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll take a short break. I think for a few minutes and thereabouts, and I think let also Raphael settle down, and also kind of get ready for his session. But I just want to say one more time, thanks to both of you, Nanddeep and Smita. It's late in India, and really good job in the community. So keep it up. Hope to see you soon somewhere in one of the community events. But any questions, then obviously we'll kind of send it your way. But we'll take a break now, and we got Raphael with us. Welcome back, everyone, and hope you enjoyed the first session on the information barriers with Nanddeep and Smita. And so it gives me a good pleasure to welcome Raphael Köllner with regards to the session on Microsoft 365 retention deep dive. So for those of you who've just joined or who are new to M365 UK, I'm Chirag Patel, the organizer of the group, and we have over 670 members, and today we've got quite a few attendees registered today. So welcome to the group. And with that, I'll just want to introduce Raphael, who's nearly 10 years MVP. And I think you're one of the few folks who I know who runs so many community groups and community websites, and in particular Teams Community Day, which I believe are happening in few locations next year. So I'll probably let you share that. But I think, yeah, just over to you, Raphael. Take it away.
Thank you very much for this amazing introduction. Now I have to write more of my introduction for my users and for my speaker and my user group. So I hope you can give me some hints in the future. So thank you very much.
No, I mean, thanks to you. You do so much. So you deserve it. All yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, thank you very much also for invitation and talking about one of my favorite topics. I'm talking about these topics and I want to share. You have to.
Yes, I just realized. My apologies. Yes, that would help again, wouldn't it?
It would help, but it's okay.
There you go.
Oh, perfectly. So I can show my screen and hopefully it works. It works. It looks like.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you.
Wonderful. So, talking about Microsoft 365 retention, one of the topics in the last 2 years, I have to talk every day about it. And I think it's time to make a short recap. And I have 45 minutes or I have 50 minutes from now. It's I can talk 50 days about it with all of the challenges, but let's make a little summary today and talk about challenges from company to real life challenges. I have my demo tent with me, and hopefully, and that's a hint from me, you can go to Microsoft Learn and make some of these SC 400, FC 800 lessons where you can learn a lot about retention. Yeah, and I'm very happy that you see the same demo tent, also Microsoft Learning courses now, because I'm one of the guys who wrote of these courses. So I'm very happy to be here. And so let's start and let's introduce myself a little bit more and go here. Yeah, my name is Raphael Köllner, and that's what Chirag is talking about. Yeah, I'm leading some of these communities, and the biggest project in this moment is the Teams Community Day. And yes, we have user groups around Europe, from Spain to UK, and also to Germany, and 15 in Germany or like this, with Teams communities and Office 365 communities. And yeah, we are together also with the Teams Day community here in UK. So I'm very happy to be here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Free to ask via the chat. I see the chat on my second desktop, so everything is fine. You can send me an email or ping me on Twitter. That's everything is fine. So let's go. Let's go a little bit forward and have a look. Oh, I'm too fast. One back. Have a look on the agenda. I have a little short introduction, and I love to be in contact with you, and you. So all of these attendees. So you can unmute yourself or making noise in the chat using Giphies or whatever when I have some questions in this session for you, and I want to hear something for you so I can go forward. I can go a little bit faster forward. So let's have a look at requirements, retention, and we have a little bit Q&A, and we talk about, for example, the most top 20 challenges with Microsoft retention policies, and maybe we will see what happened after Ignite. So here you can ask me a little bit about what happened, but in this part, let's start and make a very short introduction, and this what I have to explain every lawyer. This is hard to explain to every lawyer and every compliance officer. No, backup is not archive and archive is not backup. But I think you knows all of the differences, and yes, what we are talking about with retention policies is archive, and we talk about archive today and not about backup. So backup is another session. We can talk a little bit later, or if you have a wish to have a session about backup of Office 365, go to Chirag and ask him to organize the speaker. So we will talk about today about archiving. and we talk about archiving with native tools in the Office 365 or Microsoft 365 environment. So that's very interesting. What you can do with your licensing, what you can do with your tenant to fulfill requirements for retention requirements, also in UK and also in Germany. And I have a look at the UK requirements. So we will have a look today also at UK. So what are the typical challenges when you start with retention? And this is very interesting that we have the typical 6 challenges I see every time. The implementation of the requirements. Okay, we have a requirement and how we can define a technical way to implement these requirements, to fulfill the requirements. One of the typical challenges in most companies and the most bigger companies, and I'm working for a lot of international companies and, for example, corporations, this is a contact person who knows the perfect or the right date, the right retention date. Who knows when a file will be deleted? Who in the department is the right guy or a woman I can ask which policy or which label I need? And this is very, very interesting. For sensitivity labeling, there are often people that have, okay, yes, this is sensitive information. I need label on it, for example, with encryption and all of this. But on the retention area, this is very, 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 very interesting that we don't found a lot of person of where we can ask and talk about retention and retention policies, time periods, and all of this. Organization in the company. The most organization, they have a compliance officer, but the compliance officer said, "Hey, I'm not a part of retention." The legal team said, no, retention policies and time periods, not our fault. And the data privacy officer said, yes, we want to delete, but retention policy, no, it's not my fault. So that's very interesting to find the right people and to find an organization in the company. And thank you to the comment. Also, before I go forward, that backup is a very important topic. Yes, we can talk a little bit later about, and I can say something to this because I have a lot of questions from international companies. Do we need a backup of Office 365? What is happening? And the most of the questions are, okay, we are paying for Microsoft 365 and the backup is included, or do we need a additional backup? And only one sentence to this. Yes, you have some regulations where you need an additional backup. For example, for insurance company in Germany, they need some backups for Office 365. For example, SharePoint sites and files which are stored there. So, but only this is a little little bit for outside of retention to backup. Back to retention, historical IT of the company. So we use a tool like, for example, VM as a backup tool. And yes, that is archiving. No, that's not archiving, but yeah, often you have to explain what is the differences between both. And often, and very, very often, no one knows their own data. So where are your data? Which data do you have? Which data have which retention period? Do you have a retention system or not? And also, and this is very, very interesting, we have very different legal requirements worldwide, and the legal requirements changing very often. For example, this year, the legal requirements for Turkey are changing. The KKK is a new regulation for transfer of personal data, and also for it's influencing the retention period times in this country. Also for Russia, they have a new retention policies and all of these. So very, very interesting. Everything is in move. So you can talk a little bit about evergreen one for retention, because we have a lot of discussion also in Germany, and I know also some discussions in UK. So, but let's go a little bit forward, a little bit faster. And I think you know these. What are the typical situations in the company? We store forever and everything. We don't know why, or we don't know how. We don't know where. Privacy. What is privacy? That's what our data protection team takes care of. So another team has to do it and has to define the retention policies. We can also extract a single file from every application, from every employee from the last 15 years. This is, for example, forbidden. And yeah, all of these very interesting things. For example, also our IT system cannot delete, Microsoft 365 cannot delete, and e-discovery. What is e-discovery? No one knows what is e-discovery. So this is very interesting. The second thing, and the more technical thing, and we go a little bit deeper, delete is not delete. So this is the next one. With retention policy, we have to talk about retention for a period, and we have to talk about deletion. And this is very, very, very interesting that a lot of people think, okay, we delete, or retention label is deleting after 7 years, for example. But what means deleting? Is it deleting directly after 7 years? Yes. Is there a grace period? Do we have some special requirements, or what means deletion? And this is also a law topic and also a compliance topic and also a technical topic that's very, very interesting, where we have a deletion or not. And this brings me to a more technical view, and this is very interesting. For example, the period of retention. And who of you have a test or testing retention labels and policy and have a look on the retention period? What means the retention period, and combine the retention period with regulations out of, for example, some different laws? There are difference, or is it correct, or what do you think? No one? The retention period is okay, start and end, that's clear. But if you put, for example, a retention label on a file, what happened? Who of you defined a retention label? No one.
Hello, people.
Yeah.
Hello, Raphael. Good evening from Belgrade.
Hey, hello.
Speaking. I tested and I used the retention policies and retention labels, and let's say that it works as it should work.
Yes, it works.
And I also used to set different retention labels and retention periods for different sets of files and for different SharePoint sites.
That's definitely correct. And what I can add is, when we have a look, for example, at information governance, and when we have a look at a retention label, and this is very interesting when you have a look at this in combination with, for example, the legal regulation, and we have a look, for example, to US legal retention, for example. They have a lot of policies or laws, which means you need to restore for 10 years and delete them. But if you have a look here, you have an event, you have the event point when an item is labeled, when an item were last modified or created. But most of the laws, US, also UK, I know, also Australia and Germany and France and Italy, said, okay, for the legal requirement, for example, for all of these special forms, for example, for bills and invoices and all of this, you count at the end of the year. So you don't count the day where it's labeled or last modified. You count the last day of the year, and the next day is 1 year. So you have another counting system. So it's very interesting that the retention labeling and the label system and also the policies are an exact system. So at the day when I put a label on and 7 years later it will be deleted, okay, we have a grace period in it, yes. For SharePoint we have a little bit longer, for Exchange a little bit shorter, for chats in Teams it's also a little bit shorter, but we have a short grace period, okay, some days, and then it will be deleted. But for a legal deletion and also for data privacy, you have to delete, for example, from the last day of the year to the next day, and then on the next day you have to delete. This this is not very easy to do it with a default labeling system without E5. So you can put, and this is a solution, you can put a event on it. So you work with event types, and you see here I work a lot of with the event types, so that we can delete nearly to the date which the law gives us as a regulation. And on the other side, you can say, okay, then we store 6 months more the data and delete then. So we have a bigger grace period, and the most of the business companies said, okay, this is also fine. We store, for example, 6 months longer or 7 months longer, and then we delete. For data privacy, it's not the best idea. For example, for personal files and all of this, you have to delete earlier. So for this, it is very cool that we have these event types. For example, the employee, what we have here, the contract ends here, contract explanation of termination of contracts and agreements, or we have here employee contract ends, so that we have a deletion in another period, or in a not so exact period like the retention labels did it. So this is a very interesting information because the most of the people I talk to, they don't know it. They said, okay, yes, it's labeled when its last change is, and we delete it 1 year later when the last change is, or 7 years later. And we said, okay, in the legal system, we count in another way. We count from year to year and not from the day to the day next year. So from year to year, so we have to delete to the first day of the next year. So for 7 years, it will be the next day of the 8 year after the label is put on the file. So, but it's possible with all of these cool event types, for example, but you need E5, or you have to say, okay, I have a bigger grace period and it will be deleted a little bit later. So it's also fine for the most of the requirements. And when we have a look more at these requirements, and I'm talking about these requirements, I have some from Germany, but for UK, it's not so very interesting. So we have a lot of these, but I have found, and I have a project for a retailer also in UK, and there's a very short list of requirements. And this is one of the next biggest challenges. Do you have in your company, if it's in UK or also Satjan, I hope I pronounce your name right. This is very, very interesting. That do you have a list of all retention periods for every file in your company?
Yes, you pronounced my name right first.
Yeah.
And
okay,
second thing, in Serbia, we have acts that require, let's say, to keep some documents 7 years, 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah.
I'm at the University of Belgrade, and the law says that it is here in Serbia like this, that the National Library defines periods of retention for the institutions of the Republic of Serbia, like the universities, schools, ministries, and
cool.
we have similar lists for paper documentation, and we use them also for electronic files. So let's say that diplomas in high schools and universities are to be kept indefinitely. Just one of the examples.
That's cool. That's very cool. I don't have in contact with Serbia today, so I can remember, and I noticed for my documentation that Serbia is the best. I only know, for example, Australia has a very good system. They have a website on the Ministerium of Economics, I think. Yeah, there's a list and a database where you can search for retention periods. And if you ask, for example, for Germany and US, do you have a database where you can set, okay, for every audit report you have 6 years, and for every business letters you have, for example, 6 years, and employee health insurance 3 years, and all of this? That's not possible. For UK, you have a legal change 2 years ago, and there's where I have this list. There's a list, and you have an act And you have also some other act, and you see these acts as are also examples. The Companies Act from 1958 and the VAT Act from 1994, and there was also an act before 2 years. And in UK, it's nearly to Australia, where you have defined the correct legal periods, and this is cool and this is possible. But for Germany and US, and I see the comment, it's tricky. Yeah, it's a really tricky topic, because if we have a look at the German ones as an example, it's the same like the US ones. For the US ones, you have different retention periods for every country, for every part of the US. In California, you have other regulations than in, for example, in Washington, where Seattle is. That's a very interesting thing. The same thing in Switzerland. In Switzerland, you have different regulations for example, business letters in the country, in the departments of Switzerland, and also in some towns. For example, in Zurich, you have to store a business letter 15 years, outside of Zurich 10 years, and on the right side of Switzerland for only 5 years. So it's very, very tricky to find and implement the right thing. And in Germany, I can talk a lot of, but I make it very short. In Germany, you have the requirements from the Code of Civil, the BGB. It's a German law, and also from the Abgabenordnung, that's for tax, for example. But we have in Germany about retention period a lot of discussions. So we have only a few defined by law, and the rest is, knowledge, it's discussion. For example, we have, and this is very interesting, and I hope you can see it also. We have a very cool, do I have a slide? No, I don't have a slide. We have a cool discussion in this moment, for example, about letters when I want to work at a company and I sent them an email and they said, okay, we have an interview next week, and in this interview they pay me some traveler costs and all of this. And in Germany we have a very, very, very big and strange and crazy discussion how long you have to restore these documents and the emails of me, for example, when I want to start at a new company. And in Germany currently we have the discussion, okay, the email and the interview documentation has to restore for 6 months, and this is very interesting, but the payment for the traveler cost has to restore for 6 years. So it's totally crazy. So this is one of the big challenges to find the right way. We have some third-party tools, but they are very expensive. I have a talk with 2 of the tools that said, okay, we can be connected to the information governance system of Microsoft 365, and we can implement for different countries, for 162 countries of the world, the top 50 or top 60 requirements. And what do you think? What this cost? What do you have to pay for it? And then we go a little bit forward and more into the technical topic. I talked with them and said, okay, for 6 countries in Europe, they want 160,000 euros. So it's, I don't know what it's in fund, but it's very, very expensive. Only for connecting an automatically system for requirements of 6 countries to the information governance system of Microsoft 365 via graph. So only for the database and the connector. So if you want to make a startup, this is a great idea to make a startup and make money to handle retention policies around the world. As a little hint from my side, I don't have time, but if you have time and you know with graph and all of this and Power Automate, I have lists of all these, so we can put together and make some business. So this is also the first business hint today. Okay, and now after this business hint, and I don't have so much time, let's go to retention. And the first slides are only introduction. We want to make a little bit deep dive, so little bit of introduction, and I hope everything of you knows, okay, what are the principles of retention. So if you have a label and a retention policy, for example, and they have different time periods, which period wins? very easy question, and you have to know these 4 principles. And if you design retention policies, you also know these 4 principles, because these 4 principles are the decision for which period choose, or which period is a period when the file is deleted. This is also only introduction for this. I hope you know all of these. Also, you know the typical configuration. So you have retention labels on a file, on an email, for example, and you have retention policies. And I show you this is very interesting. And you know all of the retention policies, and retention policies you put on a location, or for example, also for chats, one-on-one chats in Teams, or channel messages, and all of this for everything of chats in a private channel in Teams. Everything of these is possible. Also, and this is new in preview, for when you have retention policies, also for Yammer. Yammer is also possible. It's in public preview in this moment, so this is cool that all of these channels and all of this will be handled with retention policies. But retention policies, for the most of the data privacy officer, it's a challenge, because they said, okay, the user don't see that will be stored, and the user deleted, and it will be stored in the background, and will be have for a special period that everyone can restore the file via e-discovery tool. So I have a lot of regulated companies that, okay, we don't use retention policies, we only use retention labels. And this is what you have to know. We have retention policies, we have labels, and we have label policies. And now I have a Champions League question for you, or a Liverpool question. I know you have a German trainer. We have a Champions League or Liverpool question. In Microsoft 365, you have retention policies, but not in the compliance center. Where it is. And it's only a question for the next month, and then the system will be deleted. But now it is real. And okay, I give you a hint. It's some of the core tools: Exchange, SharePoint, Teams, Active Directory. And this was a really challenge. And Chirag, you can remember, we have a lot of talks. Okay, retention policies. Which retention policies do you mean? Which label policies, and everything with the same name? It's totally crazy. So which I mean, and you have to know this for the next 3 months, and then it will be deleted. But okay, I give you a hint. It's Exchange. Hopefully you work with Exchange on premise, and you have retention tags. Go to the old one that you remember in history, and go some years back in your mind, and you say, okay, 10 years back, starting with Exchange, you use the compliance management, and here you see it, you have retention policies. The same name, but another thing. That's another one. And we have here retention tags, and with retention tags, you have a retention policy. So
Raphael,
you have,
if I may ask, why is there a confusion with the names? People often ask me why there are two different functions with the same
name. Yeah.
One for Exchange mail retention period, and one for Office 365, doing completely opposite things.
Yeah, completely. And yes, that's correct. And I asked this the product group, and the product group, yes, the Exchange team is an historical movement, so it called every time retention policy, and the Exchange team don't want to change, and so. And this is only for the next 3 months. The retention policies and retention tags, and you know it, and you see these this yellow bar will be deleted. So in the future, we don't have retention policies and tags in the Exchange Admin Center. So for the answer is, it's historical, and the Exchange team don't want to change. The Exchange team isn't the compliance team. There are 2 different teams at Microsoft, so they don't want to change, and we have the same names. So what the compliance team did is they changed the name of the label policies, because before it was the retention label policies. and they killed because no one understands retention policy, retention label policy. It's too much policies in my world. So they change it to label policies. So label and label policies. Label to define the label policies, to give the people in the department the labels to use. So, and the other thing is retention policies for location, like, for location. That is the easiest one. But that, but these for Exchange and Exchange mailboxes, you don't have to remember and know it for the next month, and then the system will be deleted. We only have in the future the information governance system, and the have to say the information governance and the record manager. We have to say both. With the record manager, you can start, and this is one of the my next slides. When you have a look and define, for example, periods, and then we go to the record manager. This is also a hint out of a deep dive. I defined retention policies and create these ones since 10 years. And every time I think about the system, every time we have these system discussions, how the retention policy is called. Is it the year? Is it, for example, is it business letters? So the name of the retention policy is business letters, and then how long, for example, for 6 years or for 7 years, you know the challenges in counting, and then it will be automatically deleted, for example. And out of my experience for the last 10 years, please use the year as a name. It's easier for the employees, it's easier for everyone, because if you have a year, for example, if you have a year, you can say, okay, 7 years, and 7 years are, and you have a look at the requirements, and that's, I think it's a little bit clearer when we have a look at the requirements. Go here, and for example, we have 6 years, or we have 5 years. So you see, there's a label 5 years, and there's a label 6 years. You see, okay, for 6 years, I have these little bunch of documents and little bunch of topics which we stored 6 years, and we have 5 years, and 5 years we have more for 5 years. So we have only, for example, in UK, I defined 5 labels. And I have a discussion with the car builder. I said, oh, we need 200 retention labels. No, we put a year, and the employee have to decide. And for example, we have an intranet site where where's the link to, and there are the examples and a database where the employee can choose. But we have only a few retention labels, because one of these challenges of the retention labels, and these retention labels are a little bit too much, but this is a German one. This is okay, but not more, because we have one of these challenges. Okay, I will tell you at the end in a couple of minutes. That's very interesting, because the UI of retention labels is too small. If you have a look here, so we make a little bit deep dive. So you know that you can put all of these, and we have a look, for example, let's have a look at Outlook. Where's Outlook? Outlook. I have a look to Outlook. Go to Outlook, and for example, okay, I can go here. Rules. I can go here and set, okay, no, where is it? Go to Outlook. Where is it? No, I don't want to go archive folder. No, delete the archive folder. This is a very crazy thing. Here's a policy here. Okay, and you see here you have to scroll, and that's not good. And this is one of the big challenges I'm discussing with the product group. I want to have, for example, in this thing, I want to have two columns. And I want a default choose, and I want the option that you have to choose a label. And this is one of the challenges with these UI experience. And the UI experience is very bad, for example, in Teams. That's a horror. When you want to, and do you test it? Do you test to label a file in Microsoft Teams? So open Teams. Yes, I think so. But what you have to do to put a retention label on a file in Teams. The web is loading. In the time of loading, you have time to think about it. And we have a team, for example, and we have a team here, for example, the BDO external team, and go to files. And then hopefully the web app is loading. It's extra for these community time. Or Chirag, make teams slower. Make teams slower. So, and then here, and you can remember, it's a deep dive. So you remember that in SharePoint, you can go to details and put a retention label on it. But in Teams, you open the same navigation to go to more, and there's nothing. There's nothing. You cannot put in Teams a retention label on a file. That's not possible. And I talked to the product group. Yes, it's on the roadmap, but I don't know. And correctly, we are IT guys. Okay, we know, go to SharePoint and put it in SharePoint. But you have to think the normal guy, the normal woman, they want to use a retention label. They want to use a retention label where? In Teams. Here, in this UI. It's not possible. And it's not possible to add, for example, different buttons here. That's not possible in Teams, in the File tab. So, which is a? Can you give me a hint? What is a workaround? What is a workaround for this issue? And I think for the next couple of minutes we talk about issues. that's interesting.
Yeah,
What is a workaround to make an issue that or to make to create a workaround that people in Microsoft Teams can put a retention label on a file? In Microsoft Teams, don't switch the application, don't switch to a new tab. The only way today is,
I was going to say auto retention.
yeah, auto retention, yes, auto labeling, but you have an issue.
And that's
the
it.
issue you don't see a label here. That's also in default you don't see that is a label on a document. So yes,
document library.
Satyan, you can talk. Please feel free.
Well, I would set a location policy and forget about everything until the option is available.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I give you another one. For availability, we have to wait. This is one of my my sets that I said to the product group, also to Teams and also to retention. Microsoft Teams is not enterprise ready. We need retention. The same like labeling, and there's no chance we need it in Teams. And the workaround is go to the SharePoint site, copy the link, open a web app, put a web app, call it files. Files tab is away, but files is available. It's another name, put the link in it, make save, and you know we have single sign-on in the tabs. And now it's possible to go to files, and in files you can add, for example, also the columns, for example, for retention, blah, 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 or you can make it a provisioning process or PMP practice, all fine. And here we have the issue you can't edit because the button is away. So next challenge, button is away, but yeah, you can do it here on SharePoint side. Go. I want to have this button. Da oben, apply. Yeah, it's above. Yeah, here's above. Okay, then I go here. Reload. Reload. Retention is for user experience. Reload. Reload the site. Reload Teams. Reload SharePoint site. This is one of the next challenges in SharePoint in using reload, reload, reload. Because if you work a lot with retention, like me, and you delete a file, and while the web app is loading, and delete a file, what happened, and why you need to reload? Satyan, Chirag, any idea? Do you delete a file, and for example, there's a regulatory record on it? Then the file in SharePoint, that's okay. In SharePoint, the files stay there.
The special folder, yes.
Yeah, but in Outlook, for example, the Outlook mail sometimes is away, sometimes not. And you have to reload the site. And when you reload the site, the file is there. So sometimes that is a cache issue, that's a site issue. And I have discussion with the product group about this. Yeah, this is SharePoint and Exchange, and they have challenges with it. Yeah, okay. But now back to these not F5 challenge. So back to retention. Yes, now it's possible. And now here, go more. No, go to details. It's open and put if. Wait. No, where is this? Da, choose a file. Okay, it's loading at last, and put a label on it. It's clear, and put a label on it.
I think
And
that
no,
you just earned several big Paulaner beers.
yes, definitely. We can drink some Paulaner beers. We can drink some Paulaner beers when the Microsoft Teams team understand and said, okay, we delete the classic file tab and choose the view of the SharePoint site. We have a lot of issues away with another view, and this is a workaround. And for this workaround, for example, at international companies, you have a lot of issues because you need approval for the web app tab, and the web app tab, and this is a security challenge, is an Eclipse browser. And the Eclipse browser has a proxy from Microsoft in it, and the proxy from Microsoft can scan files, so we have a security issue with the website tab. So challenges around the world with retention policies, but the best thing is it's working. It's working, let it should. So we have a system, and we can label, and we can have a retention policy on it. And yes, you will get all of these slides from me, what it's called, what is the difference, what is regulatory retention, what doesn't work in this moment, also my experience slides, and all of this I put it together. Also all of my Microsoft Teams slides, and I hope you like it. I don't want to do it in this moment, but I want to give you my slides that you have, for example, what happened as a life cycle of a team and a group when you put a retention policy in it, when you put a retention label in a group, and all of this, and you see all of these things. What I do in the last couple of minutes, I want to talk about challenges and bring you some more about challenges. One question of this group deletion. One Champions League question, or Liverpool or Manchester or whatever. If you have a regulatory retention label on Outlook Mail app, on an Outlook Mail like this, and put a assign policy and put a regulatory record. I have here a regulatory record on it. I have a regulatory record on it for 10 years. And now this is my mailbox. And now I decide I leave the company. Regulatory record for 10 years. And I leave the company. And the company said, okay, I don't want to pay a license for Raphael for this 10 years. And yeah, what happened? What happened with the mailbox? And do I need a license when I use a regulatory record for 10 years? What happened? That's a good question, or? Do you think about it? What happened with a mailbox or a OneDrive when a regulatory is on in a offboarding process?
Well, I'm
Nachan,
not sure I recall, but I think that you could make an inactive mailbox that doesn't count in the licenses.
This is an idea. Yes, inactive mailbox is okay. And when you don't put an inactive mailbox on it, what happened? The mailbox will be deleted, official, but with eDiscovery, you can restore every file.
Yes, in eDiscovery, and then you when you export the PST, you would have all those folders that can be accessed by the administrator,
correct,
but by the regular user, right?
Correct. This is correct. So inherent mailbox. So the first thing, this is a typical way what you have to do, but you have to think of a regulatory record is a freeze for 10 years. And it's a freeze also for Microsoft for 10 years. So this is very interesting that Microsoft, and this is, for example, and you know, in last weeks, the deletion of unlimited archive at Exchange, you remember, only 1.5 terabytes. And why we have this new limit, and why we have all of these limits. Yes, while with using of regulatory records, you have more and more mailboxes, you have more and more mailboxes, they don't connect to a user, and you have SharePoint sites, they are there and you can't delete it and all of this. So regulatory record is freezing also the container with it, and it's a very cool discussion about licensing and all of this. So that's really cool, but we have some more of these challenges. I will give you a little bit introduction into it. I have four slides about challenges, and I think we go a little bit deeper for this. Inherency. So if you have to do you test use cases like a user is putting a retention label on a folder? What happened? So a normal work as a employee is working on a NAS system. Do the same on SharePoint, do the same on Exchange. What happened? Is it an auto-labeling feature now with E3? No. Is it? In Exchange, yes. In SharePoint, no. In SharePoint, for example, you can put a label on a library. It's E3 file. It's E3 feature. You don't need auto-labeling. But you have an inherency for the whole library. And you can't break the inherency for a folder, for example. And this is a challenge. So a lot of people, I'm working for companies, they have a big accounting team, and the accounting team has to make all invoices for worldwide. And now they have, for example, a main folder and a subfolder. In the subfolder, they have different regulation period or retention periods. So it's not possible. 10 years for everything. In every country, in every subfolder, 10 years. So this is a challenge, and you have to know. And you only have to know when you test it and when you play with retention labels and policies. So inherency is a challenge. Also, you don't have a value, for example, 4 years for the whole tenant. Because for tools like Casala, Sway, Whiteboard in the future, hopefully, and all of these tools, nothing works. Same for task in Planner. What happened with task in Planner in this moment? Okay, in the future it will be stored in Exchange, then it's okay. But now what happened? Ideas? They will be deleted. Is a retention policy on Teams? They will be deleted. Can you put a retention label on it? No. So inherency is also one of the big challenges when we talk about retention. And the last 2 slides, or the last 3 slides, a little bit faster. Usability. Usability is for me the biggest challenge with retention at Microsoft 365. You don't have a dashboard for a user. I'm as a user, I want to see which file will be deleted tomorrow or in the next week. Do I make a decision and said, no, don't delete, put a new retention label on it? I want to decide as a user. So yes, auto-labeling, that's what Microsoft is saying, put auto-labeling on it, but I want to have a dashboard. I want to have a dashboard when which file will be deleted, and not the decision functionality. Decision functionality for every user? No, I have a limit from 1 million items. It's not possible with decision. So I need a dashboard. No dashboard. Default search queries for retention, so that the user, when they don't have a dashboard, they can search which file will be deleted. It's possible, yes, with graph, and you can make it with PMP practice, yes, but in default, no. In default, no. Select a favorite. Can you select a favorite retention label and put it on the top of the list so you don't have to scroll every time? No, not possible. Also, rename a column of retention. The retention columns in SharePoint, can you rename it? No, it's not possible. And we want to rename it from, for example, date when rename it, and yeah, it's not possible. You have to delete the column and create a new one with Graph or PowerShell. So all of these interesting things. And what is also a cool thing, yeah, the Teams thing, you know. The other thing is regulatory record. We talk about the SharePoint sites. We talk about mailboxes with regulatory record. Also the size of a group mailbox. More and more companies said, okay, and I need 2 minutes, or 3 minutes, and then it's okay. What is about when you put a regulatory record and you have a mailbox, a group mailbox, or Microsoft said, use a team. Okay, we use a team. We use a team and a team mailbox, and the team mailbox has which size? 100 gigabyte. With license, 100 gigabyte is a group mailbox. Okay. And now this group mailbox is my let's talk about yeah, it's for example, yeah, I can use it's my information@rrköllner.com. It's a group mailbox. And this is information I got invoices, bills, data privacy questions, all of this. I have to put a regulatory record on it. And I want to store a regulatory record if I be compliant with, for example, GDPR, if you be compliant with regulations in Germany or 17A4 in US. You need to be stored in the mailbox where the file will be created or where the file or the email will come. Okay, and put a regulatory record and what happened. And I get for around 10 gigabits per month. And I have 100. So after 10 months, my mailbox is full and I can't expand it. So with Teams, can I give a team a new group mailbox? So currently, my recommendation is no team, no group, use a shared mailbox. And in the shared mailbox, you can create a new shared mailbox and put the mail, for example, info@ to a new mailbox and put it every time. And when you think about big international companies, they have these mailboxes. 100 gigabits is 30 days, 20 days. So every 20 days, you make a new mailbox because of regulatory retention. So you have to think about these. Last but not least, last one. It's last one, and least is Q&A. Last one is Q&A. Integration. If you have these challenges, you want to create with Graph and Power Automate and all of these solutions. And there are solutions on the market from SharePoint, for example, and all of this. They're using retention policies. And I have a look at all of these solutions. And what I'm missing is the Power Automate support for everything. I want to move and put a retention label on it and make all of these things. For example, put a button in Teams, in the Teams view with Power Automate. Why not? It's supported. Or it supported Power Automate for Teams, but not with retention policies on labels, or not with retention labels. So maybe and hopefully in the future, same for iOS and Android. I want a bar like sensitivity labeling for retention labels. I want to choose. So, and you have to think, the most of the people in the executive board and management, which device they are working with a laptop. They are working more with an iPad. And now the executive board, where you have a lot of files with a regulatory record, working on an iPad, you can't put a regulatory record on a file. A big challenge. Last thing is multi-language support. No multi-language support. For sensitivity labeling, yes. For retention, no. It's not planned. No, it's not on the roadmap. No multi-language support. So you have to live with English. Okay, for you, it's fine. But for me, I want German. Yes, for my user, I want German. My user need German. My user need France, Spain, and all of this. They need it. And the last one, and the biggest wish from everything connected is experience. But the second thing is retention labels on Microsoft 365 apps for enterprise. They want to open Word and want to put a label on this file. Natively on a desktop, on Mac, on Windows, same like sensitivity labeling. So, and my time is over. I talked a lot.
Carry on. It's good.
But I can give you some more. So, but I think questions is one of the good thing. And I have one more. One more I have. Okay, let's talk about a great challenge. And this is a very funny challenge when I discussed it with my customers and also with the product group. We have a label and we publish a new label policy, not a retention policy, a label policy. And on this, we choose a label, and this is it. First challenge, UI. A normal administrator, where I have to click. Can you give me an information where I have to click? Choose a label. Choose a label. It's okay, but where's my button? You know what I mean? Every time we discuss, where's my button? Yeah, you have to click choose a label. Yeah, where? This is a conversation I have with the administrator. Yeah, choose a label to publish. Yeah, where? Yeah, click on choose where. And then I said, give me the chance to click, and then I click here. Okay. Oh, okay, this you mean. Oh, perfectly. Okay, so that would be cool. We have a button. And then I choose the labels. Okay, all fine. That's not the challenge. And then, now we have the next challenge. I don't want the label on everything. I want the label only, for example, for OneDrive and only for some OneDrives. And now we have limits. Do you know the limits? And this is a challenge for bigger companies.
Well, you would need to use the PowerShell to export all the OneDrive accounts and to make an CSV file and then to paste it back here.
Yes, correct. This is the first challenge, but yeah, that is correct. And which is the limit of OneDrive accounts you can put here? Which is the limit of items? 1,000, 10,000, 500, 5,000. What do you think? 100. 100 SharePoint sites in the moment, 1,000 mailboxes. In the future, we will see 1,000 SharePoint sites and 10,000 mailboxes. And now, for example, I'm working for companies, they have 250,000 mailboxes. And now, challenge, how to filter? No. I try it one time. The first time the first time with a bigger project, or no, the first, second, and third, and no, the first 10 times. The first 10 times. I'm not very happy, but the first 10 times, and then I learned it. I try to make a PowerShell script to define retention policies, or better, this label policies for 100 OneDrives for 200,000 people. So I have a little bit buckets, and you have to think out when you think these PowerShell scripts. 100 is a limit, so you have mover and leaver. You have people, they move between the company, they leave the company, they join the company, so you can't use department. Or you have to use only 60. And that's what we do. We use only 60 in this bucket because leaver and mover. So we have 40 people, leaver and mover. So I reached the limit of retention policy in one tenant. So it's not
almost
possible.
to the breaking point.
So that's not possible. PowerShell scripts, I do it 10 times, and then I learned, no, don't filter, only for special things. And the second thing is Freshfields. I think it was Freshfields. They learned that filter is a tricky thing, that you have to read included and excluded. The Freshfields case is, and this is often my demo case, Freshfield goes here and said, yes, for Microsoft, they use a retention policy for Microsoft Chats. And in this UI, the administrator said, yes, cool, I want to exclude only 5 people. And what he did is he configured only the 5 people excluded and no one included. So 150,000 Teams chat items will be deleted. So be careful of it. So which is the solution of it? And that's the last topic. What's the solution? The solution for this issue, and yeah, it can be a good solution for this issue, is this site. And this site is talking about adaptive policy scopes. So this is currently in private preview. So under NDA, so you see here, everything is under NDA, please reminder. And with this site, you can go here and said, okay, I have a tenant, and I want to join the private preview, and here everything you see it, everything is under NDA, don't publish, don't do anything, but you can go to Google and put in adaptive scopes and you see a lot of blog posts. So you can go here, put your tenant ID here, and then you can test adaptive adaptive cards and with or adaptive policy scopes. And with adaptive policy scopes, you see here the official information. You can define scopes for retention labels. And so it's a kind of filtering. And this is the idea of the product group to create a workaround that you don't need to use the filter option. So I can give you and post this link in the chat. Please go here, join the public preview, or wait a little bit and join the public preview. And then you can use, and I don't have it in this demo tenant, and then you can go to information governance, and in the information governance UI, you will find here near to retention policies, the new adaptive scope policies, policy scopes, or adaptive policies. So I put the link in the chat. Please feel free and add these new, and this is one of my biggest news, or what I like, is the adaptive scopes, which are using here via the site, and these sites, the Microsoft GitHub compliance team is working here. So this is a documentation nearby docs.com. This is a new one. So join the site, add the site in your GitHub repository and use it, and you can learn a lot about adaptive scopes, for example. And the other big thing, and this is my definitely last one, nearby the adaptive scopes, there is only one more good one, and this is in preview, and this is possible in this moment. And the other thing is the decision one, and we have multi-staging decisions in the record manager. I'm discussing a lot with customers about the decision feature, and the most of the customers said in this moment, we don't use it. We use it only for a few files, not for everything. But if you look here, you can create a decision stage in a label. Here's only the view. You see here I have the labels with decision created, and then you can go here to or you can define the group with a security group, or give it a role to the people, and they can make a decision if it will be deleted or not. And you have different stages, and stages can be external people, groups, or internal people, and they can decide it will be deleted or not. This is a second really good feature in connection with retention and regulatory retention. Now I talked a lot. If you have any questions, feel free. Send me an email, tweet me, and let us discuss about native tools for retention Microsoft 365. And I hope you learned a lot with a little bit of deep dive in this session. So thank you, Chirag.
No, brilliant. Thank you. I think wonderful session, and really a lot more informative. And some of the things I didn't know, I must say, I'll put my hand up. It's kind of really takes a lot of experience, like you did, to be able to get to those numbers and limits and all those different scenarios. And I think the one that really hurts, I guess, anybody is that usability, the experience. It has to flow, right? Otherwise, users don't use it, and hence it doesn't get the buy-in for the capability that there is. So, I think, hats off to you. So thank you for that. And I think, great discussion points in this session as well, and from Nachan. So good stuff. I'll probably just open to the floor anyways, I think, for people to unmute themselves and really just ask the questions. But we've overrun, but hey, this is worth it, right? This is good. So thanks for the attendees to hang around. But fire away, ask your questions.
I will share the slides to you, correct? And
please. I'll send you a link afterwards. Great. Any questions, anybody? But I think in the meantime, while we wait for any questions, I've posted a couple of links for feedback, so it will really help for Raphael and for others earlier on, Nanddeep and Smita, so at least they can add more content or tweak their sessions for future. So really, please do that, and I really appreciate that. But also, like I mentioned earlier as well, that we've got our next event coming up next month on 17th. November, so stay tuned for that. But if we have any questions, then please do. else we'll hang around for a few minutes. Go ahead.
Well, Raphael, what happens with the retention policies when there is a tenant-to-tenant migration? I never had a case like that. But
I had a case. Possible. I had a case. When you transfer, for example, a file with a retention policy. Okay, let's make a Champions League question out of it. We use a file with a regulatory record on it, and we move it to another tenant. What happened? Can you move it? Yes. For example, use ShareGate. ShareGate or Quest, SafePoint, and all of this. You can move. But this move is, and you need to do, is a copy. Regulatory record, you can copy a regulatory record, so you move to another tenant. Is it is it okay for law requirement? For example, we have in Germany it called Abgabenordnung. It's a finance regulation, or the same regulation in US. Is it fine? It's a critical thing. You have to explain very in detail why you move the files from A to B. Moving is not the issue. The issue is that when you move a file from tenant to tenant, in the new tenant, what do you think? The label is on it or not? No, there's no label on it, and and now you can understand why one of my challenges is the inherency, because when you put a label, for example, or retention policy don't work. So for this, so you put a label on it, and you put a label for a library, and every file you store in the library and copy in the library gets the same label. So the only solution today is, yes, you can copy and you can move files, or you can move emails and everything. Yes. And then in the new tenant you have to relabel. You put labels on it and relabel.
It's a similar situation to sensitivity labels, right?
Definitely.
You have to decrypt it, right? When it's, and then you have to kind of re-encrypt.
Yeah. So that's one of the best questions when customer asks me, okay, let's make due diligence process, or let's switch to a new tenant because the new tenant is greater than the old one, because the new tenant is stored in Germany and the old one is in Europe, in Dublin, and we want a new tenant. No, don't do it. Don't do it. No. It's crazy thing. No, that's not a supported case. So you have to label everything new. And Microsoft said, okay, yes, that's possible with auto labeling. And auto labeling, is it the same when a user from accounting labeling 10 years manually and supported with auto labeling files? For example, 5 petabytes of files? No. How fast is auto labeling? Sitjan, how much files on one day can be auto labeled?
Well, I'm afraid I don't know the answer.
25,000.
And so, how fast can you do the migration?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for me, for example, not big files with ShareGate, I can move. What I move in one day, 480,000 files.
Wow, that's a pretty big number. I asked that because I know that Sharepoint migration tool is not a champion.
No, it's not a champion. So that's what I said about ShareGate or other tools like Quest, SafePoint. It's not advertising solution, but yes, you can. So the result is you can move more files than auto labeling feature will label. So you have a gap of retention, and this is not a very best position to explain everyone from the regulation office why and what. And for me is yes, auto labeling, and yes, use the label for a library. You have to use everything what you can get. And the best one is, and that when you see that a migration will be start in 5 years or 10 years, and no one knows when you have to migrate it, but the best thing is to put a retention label on it when the last change is, for example, because the last change is a copy in another tenant also. So you put the last change, so you can put a label on it, but it's crazy. You have to use also Microsoft Graph and all of this, because the time period of the old files in tenant 1 started, for example, started 5 years before, and you have 10 years, and then you move, and then the next label is only 5 years, but the classic label is 10 years for the same. You know what I mean? You have to switch the labels connecting to the time period in the new tenant. And is it a good project? For consultants, yes. For consultants, it's a good project. For customers and for companies, no. Not a good project. It's expensive. Okay. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, that was a great answer. Thank you a lot. Thank you very, very much.
Great stuff. Okay, I think so. We should wrap up. I think if you're okay with that, Raphael, I think you should do part 2 of this session maybe in the future. So that would be good. But I think let's start wrapping up. And I think feel free to ask questions. I think everyone knows Raphael around Twitter and various community sites. So just want to say a big thanks to you, Raphael, once more time for being here at M365 UK. And also our previous speakers today. And I hope all the attendees got a lot more value out of this today. I certainly have, and and hope this continues with all the developments, and obviously your shopping list for Microsoft is huge. So keep at it and keep going. So have a wonderful times in the community. I think we'll probably speak at some community events soon, I think, and so hope to see you there. But in the meantime, everybody, look after yourself, stay well, and until next time, take care. Thanks, everyone.